Welcome to Wargaming. Let's do that again. uh, Welcome to Wargaming Recon. I am your host, Jonathan J. Reinhardt. Wargaming Recon is the only member of the TSR Podcast Network to discuss historical and New England gaming. This is episode number 212. That's right, 212 reviews preview. The title means nothing, doesn't it? Don't worry. So, in this episode, reviews preview, which again, the title probably means nothing to most of you, we're doing things a little differently. So, normally, I have this whole outline and all that kind of stuff, and I get all prepped and go through it all. But in light of our most recent episode, I thought I would try this a little differently. So, I don't have anything really planned. I just have this general idea in my head about what I'm going to do for this episode. The primary reason for it is to kind of give you a heads up or a little sneak peek, an auditory listen peek into some of our upcoming reviews, things that we're going to be doing and covering, and also to kind of just deal with some of the reaction and response to our previous episode. For those of you who don't know what that is, our prior episode is Gaming Against Anxiety, episode number 211. You can find all of this, by the way, in our show notes at wargamingrecon.com/WR212. That's wargamingrecon.com/WR212. We'll have our show notes and you'll be able to get this stuff there, including a link to episode 211. So I want to begin by just diving in and talking about a special episode that we're going to be doing where we will talk about wet palettes. Not every gamer who likes to paint miniatures, or who paints them, whether they like to or not every one of them feels that a wet palette is necessary. Some prefer to go straight from the paint pot or the eyedropper. They use a plate, or they don't mix. They just go straight and do it. Others have a longer approach to how they're going to do a project, and they want the paints to last longer and to deal with it in that way. Or they might blend colors. So we actually backed a Kickstarter with help from the kind people at Empalade for their support and allowing us to do that, which is Everlasting. That's the name of the Kickstarter. It's called Everlasting, the best wet palette for miniature painting. We just got ours today when I'm recording it. I'm recording this on July 3rd. You guys will get this episode a little bit later. We were able to back for the Studio XL set, and it comes with a variety of things. We're going to do more with this in our wet palette review. But I want to talk about this product a little bit. This was made in France, or designed and oriented and thought of and had the genesis of in France and Paris, actually, by Redgrass Games. And they sent out product pre-production versions, I guess you could say. Not quite, samples, but just early designs to a bunch of different professional painters for them to try. And they have all sorts of information on their website. They have things like video tutorials to follow. But it came today. The extra large one is huge. It's the largest wet palette I've ever seen. It's blue. It's actually a very nice shade of blue. It's pretty. It's very modern design, rounded edges, has a gray bottom. When you open it, and it's sealed actually very well. It's very tight. It's hard to open because that seal is quite good. At least on the first time opening it, it was anyway. And again, we're gonna put it through its paces. But when you open it, you can actually use the lid as another wet palette if you want. So you can have two things going at the same time. There's a very nice fabric elastic that holds it all together. It's stitched well. It comes with a wavy accessory that has magnets in it. Mine broke off or fell off when I tried to attach it to the side. So you would line up the two magnets in your wavy accessory with the magnets on the wet palette itself. So whether you got the extra large like we did, or you got the standard size, which is an orange lid, and I can't remember what they call it, what the name of that smaller size is, but each of them have 3 locations. On the 2 short sides and 1 long side, they have magnets built in. So the idea is you would line up your magnets from your wavy with those, and it would stay there. And your wavy is really just a series of 5 connected depressions that you would put paint in, so that you could take your paint out. You could have one with a little bit of water maybe, and then you can then paint. You can mix them. You draw from there, so you would go straight from your paint pot into your wavy, one of 5 spots, and then you could then go from that into your wet palette instead of going from the paint pot to the wet palette directly. It comes with a box, and I know you all think I'm crazy, but I love me some boxes. I'm a huge fan of boxes. So one of the updates, actually, one of the stretch goals was to get a better cardboard box. So it's a very nicely made cardboard box. It holds well together. It's nicely designed. Again, that probably shouldn't matter, but it does. My one thing that is, I think, is a little odd about the box, and again, it shouldn't matter because it doesn't deal with the product. The way you open it is from the bottom. So if you're looking at it and you hold the box up to you, it's actually on the bottom. There's a tab, that's the correct way to open, because at the top is where it's folded. So I think they actually should have printed things differently so that you would open it from the top, not from the bottom. And I think what they were going for is when you have it flat on a table, you're reading what the thing is, and then you open it and that's straight at you, whereas the other way it would be away from you. So I think that's what they were doing. But like I said, I think it's a little odd, if you're holding it up. It's a nicely designed product. It has some good heft. They had a little bit of problem with those magnets, and it's just starting to get to backers as of my time of recording this, which is the night of July 3rd, 2018. So not everyone's had a chance to get it and to respond about it, but I'm not the only one who's talked about the magnets coming off. Some people have said the magnets have come off during shipping. And depending on where you are in the world, they have a variety of shipping carriers. So for North America, they use someone called Quartermaster Logistics, but this shipped globally. It had almost 8,000 backers, over 7,700 backers. It raised over 270,000 euros. And that's basically a 1-to-1 ratio with the American dollars. Their goal was just 37,500 euros. So that tells you something about it. And with the wet palette episode, we're going to be broadening out. So I have a private press wet palette that I've had for ages that I used and I love. You can get them at the Hobby Bunker, actually, if you happen to be in my neck of the woods. So they have them there. You can order from them online. I'm going to be doing a homemade one because Jamie Searle had mentioned at one point that maybe I should think about doing a homemade one. And I talked with him to see how he does his homemade wet palette. And I did some research online to see how others do that. That was noisy, and I apologize, but I'm picking up a bag, and Joshua will have edited this to make it sound better. You can make a homemade wet palette for as little as $3. I went to the dollar store. I bought a pack of sponges. I got some plastic food containers that you could use to bring like your lunch or whatever. You can think of them like Tupperware or Rubbermaid, but they don't have to be name brand. And then parchment paper. Each thing cost me $1, $3 plus tax for all of them. And then you put them all together and off it goes. Some people would get wax paper, but I'm told you need to use parchment paper. We're going to test it with the parchment paper. I did not get any wax paper, but I might pick up wax paper as well. Now here's another edit point for Joshua. So another thing that I picked up, and you're going to hear crinkling because it's in a bag. It's called a Stay Wet, S-T-A-W-E-T. This is not a Kickstarter thing, but this is a wet palette that artists will use often for doing canvas work, or, people use it for gaming, painting D&D miniatures, Reaper figs, or painting your armies, whatever. But a lot of just regular artists use it, and it comes with some of the paper that you use with it, I believe. And this one is 8.5 inches by 7 inches by 1 inch. So that gives you your depth as well. And it has a sponge. It's a container. It's supposed to be pretty watertight. It's made by Masterson Art Products from Phoenix, Arizona. So we're going to put this in the mix to test that as well. So we'll have the everlasting wet palette, which also came with, and I don't think I told anyone, but because of some stretch goals, it came with not one, but two hydration foams. So these are basically serve the role of the sponge that people use in homemade ones. But these are supposed to be very resistant to mold, antimicrobial. So there's two of those. And then it came with 100 what they call hydration paper sheets. And, fit for whatever size device that you have. And these work just like the hydration sheets for my Private Day Press one, or for the sheets that you would get for the Stay Wet, or for the parchment paper if you do your homemade one. So they came with that as well. And you just kind of put it all together, and we're going to test it a variety of ways, actually. And I'll be able to go more in depth into our methodology when we do that actual episode. The whole episode is going to be devoted to wet palettes. Normally now we're trying to divide things up so that when we do product reviews, we're going to have a product and we'll insert that as a segment into the show. And believe it or not, you would think all that editing and stuff would be harder and take more time. And I mean, it does have to get inserted and so forth, but Joshua, our incredible sound technician and audio editor, does a great job, and he just seamlessly gets them in there so we can record this stuff. We can send him the audio files, and he can mash it all together and make it sound really good for all of you. But the plan is we're going to do a variety of tests. So we're going to do things like, how easy is it to use? What happens if you don't follow the instructions? Now, I'm going to make some broad stereotypes, and I do not mean to offend anyone, but if I do, I hope you will kindly accept my apologies. Generally speaking, miniatures wargamers, especially historical miniatures wargamers, tend to be men of a certain age. And men of a certain age have a stereotype about them, myself included, where we don't read directions or instructions. I'm not saying that's true. I'm not saying men or men of a certain age tend to be more likely to be historical war gamers or to be war gamers or miniatures gamers. But for people who don't tend to look instructions, are you really going to muck it up by not watching the video tutorials for the everlasting wet palette, or by reading in-depth instructions on how are you supposed to use this wet palette, this device, this tool? So we're going to see how easy is it to use. We're going to follow the instructions and see how clear they are and kind of use those as some baselines. We're going to see how well does it handle mixing paint? How well is it easy to keep it? We're going to see how much mold comes on. This is kind of more science experiment, right? But we're going to actually take these and we're going to put some paint in, and we're going to test them and check at different intervals of time to see, is the paint still wet? How long is the paint still good? How long before it gets hardened? We're going to also look to see, does anything grow in there, things that we don't want to grow? Mold, fungus, whatever. Some people have claims with wet palettes. And again, it depends on the brand and your environment, because things like humidity and the climate in which you live all play roles in this. Doing this in the summer might not be completely fair, but I live in New England, right here in America, and our summers are warm, but they're also not the same as being in Florida or the Mediterranean or a tropical climate like the Amazon or anything like that. Nor are they like being in Siberia, right? Or Upper Canada or Alaska or parts of Russia like Siberia, whatever. So it's more temperate region. So it should still be fair, even though it's a warmer time of year. But some people have claimed with some of these wet palettes that they can put paint in them, seal it up, and the paint will still be good weeks or months later, and that they can then come back and use it for their project. Now, I don't know about you, but as a wargamer dad with another kid on the way, oh, right, you guys might not know that because we made the announcement on our social media. My wife and I are expecting a second child. The baby will be due January 1st, 2019. And as a result of that, I'm not going to be going to TotalCon. But as a wargamer dad with another one on the way, my time to be able to sit and paint at length is very limited or almost non-existent. So a thing like a wet palette is a necessity for me, if for no other reason than to keep any paints that I've mixed fresh and the other paints fresh and to keep them fresh for as long as possible. So I want to test, is this true? And which ones work the best? Which ones will give you the best bang for your buck? Which ones are worth spending the money on? Do you actually get more by spending more? Or can you get away with a cheap option? How good are those homemade wet palettes? So we're going to look at all of these things and we'll give some thoughts about them. I'm going to be doing most of the work, but I'm hoping to rope in my buddy Adrian and maybe some other people and get some thoughts from them as well and do this gigantic wet palette episode and share our results with you and share our thoughts. And we'll have a recommendation, maybe more than one recommendation for what kind of wet palette you should use and why, if you don't use a wet palette, why you might consider using one or why maybe they're not worth your time at all. Maybe they make no difference whatsoever. I don't want to presuppose that wet palettes are the next best thing since sliced bread because maybe, just maybe, they're not. We'll find all of that out. Now, another review that we will be doing coming up in a future episode of Wargaming Recon is a pretty neat one, I think. And it's going to be about some entrenchments that we have planned for, well, some World War II stuff. So these come by way of some very nice people over at Ironclad Miniatures. The owner, named John, is, from what I can tell by email, just a really nice guy. Now, he's had some products in Wargame Soldiers and Strategy magazine, and that's where I got my first peek at stuff. And I thought, oh, it looks good in the magazine, but how good would it look in person? And will it hold up? And maybe it's worth trying. And they seem like things that would be simple enough for me to paint and deal with without worrying like, oh, am I going to have to do a lot of assembly? What's going to hold me back? How quickly can I actually get stuff done? And so these seem like they are ideal candidates for that. And I thought, okay, let's write to them and see how it goes, and maybe they'll do it. And lo and behold, they have. So they've sent a variety of things, such as a one-person foxhole made out of resin, I believe, is how it looks, or might be hard, might be plastic, but it feels resiny to me, or it definitely could be like a soft plastic. I'd have to double check. And for our review, I will. They sent a gun emplacement. They sent a two-person dugout and foxhole. That's the better word. Two-person and a one-person foxhole. They sent some gun emplacement things, and the pieces look really nice. For these, what we're planning to do is we're going to examine them and look how nicely they are, how much cleanup work is there. And just looking at this one person, I believe this one person foxhole, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of cleanup to do. Not a lot of mold lines or anything like that. We're going to look to see how much detail is on them. And then we're going to also work to paint them. How easy is it to paint? Do you have to do a lot of coats? We're going to look at to see how nice they appear, how well they fit in on a tabletop. So we're going to try to compose them all together. And we're also going to look to see, can you actually get models in them? In what scale and what size? Are they true? Or do they appear to be true to what is out there and what they're recommended as? So we'll look at all of those, and they will appear in an episode of Wargaming Recon. Probably won't be a whole episode devoted to them, but they will be in an episode, I should say, of Wargaming Recon. And we'll cover them and talk about that. And I think that'll be really neat. I had mentioned it to Adrian because we were looking when we were at Huzzah, and I said, hey, look at this. Don't these look really cool? We should talk with the company and see if maybe we can review them. One of the things I really liked about the company when I wrote to them was John, actually, the owner, had a bunch of questions for me because basically he's gotten burnt in the past, and I appreciated his thoroughness. He had told me that there were times in the past where people would contact him and say, hey, we want everything, we want to review it or do whatever, we have a blog or this or that or whatever. And he sent them product and they've done nothing with it. And so he was cautious. I mean, he's been in the business a long time. He's been a gamer for just about as long as I've been alive. And he wanted to make sure he was was not going to get burnt again. So I told him a bit about the show and things that we've done and guests that have been on and reviews that we've done, and kind of built up this rapport. And he asked what pieces I was interested in, so I told him. Said, "But anything you want to send would be great. But these are just some things that appeal to me that would be fun to review." And then I didn't hear for a while, and lo and behold, this package arrived today, the same day as a wet palette stuff, the everlasting wet palette from Kickstarter. So that was pretty cool to get both. And I didn't have any communication that he had sent the stuff or anything. I figured he had because he said he would, but I didn't hear. And he's busy, and I'm busy. We're all busy, right? We all have very busy lives. But it was really cool to see the package there with my stuff and be like, "Ooh, let's dig in and take a peek at all of that." So those are some upcoming reviews that we have. And at this point, I want to transition to the other topic from the show where I want to deal with some reactions and some thoughts that have been happening about our previous episode, the gaming advanced anxiety episode. So, in case you haven't listened to that, I'm going to briefly recap that. I don't want to bore everyone because we did just release it. But basically, that episode, I reveal that I am one of roughly 40 million Americans who suffer from anxiety. And I give some information about the number of gamers that might exist who have it. And I share in that episode 5 tips as to how gaming can and does help me deal with my anxiety and how it could help you as well. And that episode just came out yesterday, actually, as of the time that I'm recording this. I'm recording this again July 3rd. So it came out July 2nd. But by the time you listen to this episode, you may have already heard the other one, and so much other time could have passed. But just within roughly 24 hours, there's been a strong, and I think that's understating, but a strong reaction to the episode. Now, I should say, when I first started the show many, many moons ago, I just hoped someone would listen, maybe a buddy or someone would tune in and think, "Oh, okay, that's kind of neat." And I'm continually floored to see how many people listen to the show, how many people appreciate what we do here, and the impact that we have. And I try not to talk a whole lot about that because I don't want to, blow myself up into being more important than I am. I am no different than you. I just happen to be someone who's talking into a microphone. That's the only difference from us, right? We're gamers. We like to have fun with our friends. We have work. We have families, all these things. I just happen to be the one who's talking into the microphone. You could do it too, right? I just happen to have something else about me. I have this anxiety, right? And when I was made aware of it and diagnosed with it, and made to realize that I've had it for a very, very, very long time without realizing that, I felt that I have this tool here, the show, the podcast, and that maybe I'd be able to use it to reach other people and maybe help some other people. And that's one of the things that we've tried to do here at Wargaming Recon. We've raised money for kids in need who have to get medical help, who can't afford it, and their families can't afford it, and where they would be turned away. We've raised money for a charity that says, okay, no, families never see a bill, no matter what the kids need. Because I don't know about you, but I really believe that no child should be turned away from essential medical care just because they can't afford to have it taken care of. So we've done things like that. We've put out resources and evergreen content, things to help make you aware about products, right? Reviews, so that you know that you can trust us and that you're not going to waste your money on something you're going to buy, or tips and advice about different things that you can do and places to go and fun stuff to be done, but also ways that you can game better, that you can game more efficiently, that you can have more fun, that you can maximize your space, and how you can do things for the most fun. And maybe you also learn a little bit of something too from the show. So realizing all that, I truly felt that I had to do something on the show to share with all of you and tell you about what I'm going through, because maybe it could help all of you. And I didn't really want to make it about me. I originally thought that I'd get a mental health professional on and would be more a clinical kind of approach, like, oh, people might have anxiety and here are coping mechanisms. Honestly, I had a little bit of difficulty with that, and I felt maybe it would resonate more with people, and apparently it has, for you to hear about my story and how it's impacted me, and that you're not alone because maybe you or someone you know has anxiety, and maybe it's crippling to them. Maybe they deal with it better. There's a whole wide range of it and different types and different severities, much like people who are on the autism spectrum. You go from very low functioning to very high functioning. And I'm not saying people who have anxiety are the same as people who have autism or vice versa. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not making any judgments, but just that you have this wide um, array of degrees, many shades of gray, right? And people deal with it differently. So we put out the episode, and I got to say, it was hard. It's really difficult for me to record that episode because I mean, it's one thing to talk on the show about gaming and things that we're doing, and it's another to say, "Hey, I got this thing. There's something wrong with me," or for me, it feels like there's something wrong with me, and to just kind of open yourself up that way. But knowing that other people deal with it and other people have opened up with it, I knew I had to as well. So we released the episode, and the episode is hugely popular, right? We've shared it on social media and gotten a lot of feedback from people. And I'm not going to specifically highlight anyone because I don't want anyone to be pinpointed. Personally, I do feel that if people comment on social media, you should realize it's a public forum and that things you say on there, especially for like a public group or a public persona, whether it's like our Facebook page or our Twitter account or whatever, if you do a public tweet or a public posting or public comment, it's going to be out there and it's fair game. But even so, I'm not going to specifically highlight anyone. But there have been people who've talked about how that they have their own issues with anxiety, and some of them have crossover with me. So one of the things I mentioned in the episode was that it's hard for me going to conventions. It's really hard because there's all the people and the crowds and all that kind of stuff. And so some people have said that although they have that kind of thing, going to a convention for them doesn't bother them. And I'm going to pause it. And this was something that I believe the people at TotalCon, I want to give them credit for, that they had felt was that maybe for some of us who are gamers who have anxiety, then maybe when we go to these conventions, we might not suffer from our anxiety as much because we realize we are surrounded by like-minded people and people who are going to be more compassionate and understanding, and you have that common ground of whatever the game is that you play, and they're not going to judge you for it so much. And I mean, my anxiety just kind of follows me all over the place, but everyone has their own. I've been really floored actually by the positive response of people who have said kind things and encouraging things, and I've been appreciative that I've shared what I'm going through, and not only that, but that they've shared it with other people. So one of the things with Facebook in particular, you can tell is when you put something up, it'll let you know that people have shared it. So some people have shared it with mental health professionals or with friends. Um, I'm gonna call one person out, although I just said I wouldn't. But my buddy Joshua had shared the episode with people, and he just wanted people to know that he and I have been friends for quite a while, and that he feels that the episode is a great example of showing how the hobby can help all of us. And I agree with him. The hobby can do a lot for us. There's a reason so many of us come to this hobby. And it's such a broad hobby, right? Tabletop gaming covers things like board games, it covers things like card games, miniatures gaming, role playing games. There's so many different things under that umbrella. And we have that community there. And I think community is very, very important and it can make a difference for a lot of people. And I honestly wasn't expecting so many people to share, to comment, to like or retweet or things of that sort about the episode. And one after another person was sharing it, was thanking me for sharing what I'm going through and sharing the tips and advice. And one other person happened to say that they felt the episode was very poignant because, in their opinion, our hobby has many reasons for just existing. That they think a lot of it has to go with, as I said, that sense of community, the sense of belonging and having happiness and managing one's stress and anxiety. More and more in life, we're called to do more, to do it with less time, with less resources, and we're pulled in many, many directions, often different ones, often at the same time. And it's hard. So to have something like our hobby, it makes a difference, I think. And it helps us to kind of recenter ourselves, to refocus, and to kind of push all that noise aside and to have some quiet. I have a friend who just thinks there's a lot of value in quiet, and I would agree. Recently, and I know this is going to sound weird, right? Considering it's a wargaming episode, um, for our wargaming podcast. But recently, my wife and I went and saw the documentary about Mr. Rogers. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Mr. Rogers. For me, growing up, he was an integral part of my childhood. Watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood made a huge impact on me. And one of the things that he really focused on in teaching was that children, because his attention was on children, was that children have a wide variety of emotions which are as valid, as real, and as important as those experienced by adults. And that he wanted to help kids to realize who they are and to learn and appreciate what it needs to take to be a good person. And sometimes that would mean him doing something as seemingly ridiculous as showing literally what 1 minute of time is. And he happened to do that in an episode by having a clock, and the clock ran for 1 minute, and the camera focused on the clock, and you had silence for 1 minute. Now, I'm not going to ruin anything for people who watch the documentary, but it ends with something that he did in this famous YouTube clip of when he won an award and he's up on stage and he talks about how to get where he got, there were people in his life who made a huge difference, and that he felt a lot of people have this. Many of us have someone, at least one person, right, who made a huge difference in our lives, who loved us, who supported us. And so when he won his award, he wanted people to take 1 minute, and he timed them to just think of someone who loved us and helped us and supported us. And at the end of the documentary, it was very emotional. You can tell I'm tearing up here, which is weird because I try not to get emotional. But at the end of the documentary, they have the audio of him saying that. And the documentary pauses for 1 minute. And then it ends. It fades to black and it ends. And I remember sitting in the theater thinking, wow, this was such a profound and amazing documentary. But why wasn't anyone clapping? Because it was truly a great documentary. I highly recommend it. And I looked around and I realized because all of us, it was all adults, people from the youngest end in their 30s to 70s and 80s, all of us were crying. We were sobbing because of many things, really. But to know that sometimes you just need that time, right? You need that moment of quiet to refocus on yourself, to refocus on things that matter. And in the case of Mr. Rogers in the documentary, it's about that one or more than one person or people who've helped you, who've loved you, and helped to build you up, or whether it's you just need to kind of recenter. You need to come back to yourself and to just really be and to realize who you are. And that's what it is often with anxiety, that there's so much going on and you have all this noise happening and it's hard to quiet it. But when you do quiet it, you're then able to slowly open it up and get that volume to be at an acceptable level, and then you can deal with it. And it was neat for me to kind of see that with Mr. Rogers, and then to tie it together with wargaming. It's something I would never have tied it together with at all. But like I said, people have been responding to the episode. I'm really appreciative of it. And actually, um, we got a message on Twitter, which I can share. And I'm going to share it right now about the episode. And we don't often get a whole lot of stuff on Twitter, mainly because I don't quite understand it. So I don't use it a whole lot. But I'm going to quote this one, despite having said that I was going to quote anyone. So at Kargan Demon Claw responded to our tweet about the episode and said, quote, "Perfect timing. I'm feeling really depressed today. Painting models is part of my management strategies. I know I am in trouble if I haven't painted or built something in 3 days. Tonight, it's going to be hard to get motivated." And that kind of comment came up a lot. And so it touched me to know that I seem to have released something and with this content and with that episode that might actually help people. And I think we have a lot of great episodes this year, and I think we've had a lot of great episodes in previous years. Things that I think are really fun or interesting or useful, but something tells me that the Gaming Against Anxiety episode is gonna be particularly special for a lot of people, and, I hope that more and more people listen to it and get to hear it and spread it, not because I want all the downloads and the listens, and I mean, it's nice, right? Like, I look on Facebook, for example, and I see that, almost 2,000 people have seen the postings about the episode, and, like, that's great because on average, we get 1,200 downloads of an episode, so that's roughly 30,000 downloads per year, and if you figure each download is one person, which maybe it is or maybe it isn't, that means we reach 30,000 people in a year. And then on social media, I mean, getting almost 2,000 people just on Facebook. That's pretty cool. So being able to hopefully make a difference in people's lives is one of the reasons why we do the show here at Wargaming Recon. So yeah, we like to talk about things like painting, right? And I talked about how we're going to do this whole wet palette episode. And it might just seem like, oh, we're trying to hawk some goods, right? We're trying to promote something. And a lot of podcasts will be like, hey, look, here's this thing we're promoting. We've got an ad or a sponsor or whatever. I've always said that we've only had sponsors where they're entities or organizations in which I believe. And we share products that maybe are good, maybe are not. But when we review them, we try to be unbiased. But if we promote them, whether we're paid to, whether we're receive some compensation, or whether we're just doing it because we want to do it, if we promote them and give them our stamp of approval, it's because we believe in them. It might seem silly that we're doing a whole episode on wet palettes, right? Sometime this year. But when you read a message on social media from someone who talks about how they deal with depression, and I'm going to presume maybe some anxiety with that because the two usually go hand in hand. When you see that, and you see that one of the ways in which they're able to cope is by painting models, by constructing things, by building models, assembling, and you see that that's one way that they're able to get through the day, you realize that, although many episodes of the show and many things that we talk about in the hobby, right, might seem silly. You're playing with toy soldiers, you're moving things around, you're playing a game. More often than not, I would bet they have a deeper use and a deeper meaning, and they might help a lot more of us in a lot more ways than we realize. So we're going to be getting into more normal, more usual content moving forward. Our next episode, actually, and I might not always be talking about whatever our next episode is because I'm going to be trying to streamline and make things a little bit easier so I don't have to uh, have my anxiety pinging, trying to perfect everything for episodes, but still have good quality for all of you. But our next episode, if everything goes according to plan, and it should, is going to be our Dwarven Forge interview where we have Stefan Pokorny and Nate Taylor from Dwarven Forge coming on to talk about the new Kickstarter, which I believe is going to be a new Caverns Kickstarter. And I I'm going to suggest that they listen to the anxiety episode, really. But moving forward, we're going to have more of that usual kind of content. So you have that coming out. I'm going to be doing the wet palette review and have the other things. And of course, I'm going to be learning how to play Hitler's Reich at one point, which is a GMT game by one of the fellas over at MHWA, and also going to deal with A Distant Plane, which is another GMT game, and Maneuver, which is another one also suggested by one of the MHWA people. And we'll have that kind of stuff. And I think we'll also be learning how to play Battle Group and talk about that on the show and things of that sort. And so we'll have more actual like gaming and wargaming stuff. It's not going to be all like emotional, like, oh no, Jonathan has anxiety. That's awful. But oh my goodness, is he only going to talk about that on the show from now on? I'm not, I promise. But I do think that was a very important episode to get out. And I'm only doing this episode, kind of talking about it as, like a hybrid episode, because I'm overwhelmed really by the feedback and the communication and the response really to that episode. I'm floored. And I thought it might be helpful, but I was worried because I was like, this is so different from anything we've done on the show. And I mean, we did the Wargaming Against Depression episode many moons ago with Joshua Shoebridge, and that was another one of those sharing episodes, right? But like, it's been a long time, and to do something where like I'm just like, here, open up and look inside me. It's not normally what you would get on a gaming podcast, right? So it felt different, and I was a little concerned that maybe people would be turned off by it, and they'd be like, "Oh, I just want to know what the new cool games out are. I don't want to have any of this other like touchy feely stuff." That wasn't the case, and so my worries were unfounded. But again, anxiety. That's how it goes. Well, everyone, I appreciate you listening to this episode, and I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, we will be having reviews coming up. We're doing a lot of that kind of stuff, talking about gaming, and there's actually another Kickstarter going on, which should be ending soon. It's a Scarbox Battle Kickstarter. We haven't actually talked about it a whole lot, but I do recommend that you look at it. It's fully funded, so it's going to happen. They have unlocked 1 or 2 stretch goals, and then they said they were going to, on their own, just make all of them unlocked so that everyone has access to all the stretch goals, everyone who backs. So I suggest that you go and back. A couple notes on it, though. It's not the plush mats, which are the nice short teddy bear fur ones. It's for the high quality fleece. Sorry, the high quality fleece mats. They're single sided, not double sided. And this is probably going to be the last time that they'll offer those at that price point in a Kickstarter, because they actually think in 2019 they're going to have to raise prices. But they have a lot of cool designs, and I can't wait to pick what I want. And I've been having some discussion on Twitter with Adrian. You can all see that on our Wargaming Recon Twitter account. And it's about what designs we're going to pick. So it's really cool. I suggest that you do that and check it out. We'll have a link in the show notes as well. And I think we covered everything that was floating around in my head. And that's what we got. So like I said, this was a different kind of style episode because it wasn't as formatted as usual, but that's what we got. I want to thank everyone who's listened to the show. I want to thank our supporters on Patreon, which you can go and back for as little as $1 a month at wargamingrecon.com/Patreon. And I want to let you know to check out our episode guide, because that's where you, for the time being anyway, that's where you'll be able to see what's coming up, when episodes will come out, and what the topic or theme or guest might be. And you can find all of that at the show notes for this episode, wargamingrecon.com/WR212. That's wargamingrecon.com/WR212. I want to thank everyone for your time. I want to thank Joshua Shoebridge for the magic that he does, for making the episodes sound as amazing as they are. I want to thank my team at Wargaming Recon, and I want to thank, once again, everyone over at Patreon and our incredible sponsors as well, who help keep the show on the air, because as much as I love doing the show, It's not cheap to do, and I simply can't afford to fund it all myself anymore. So that's why we need Patreon backers, why we need crowdfunding, why we need sponsors, and all that kind of stuff, so that we can have that and keep the show coming for all of you. And I hope you feel that it's worth the ads that we have at the beginning and at the end of the show. And I hope you feel that it's worth your time, that you get value out of it, that you get entertainment, that you get maybe some information out of it, that you find that it's useful for you. So thank you. And you know the drill. No matter how busy you are, no matter what's going on in your life, no matter how much time you're spending looking at wet pallets, dealing with anxiety, or thinking about what products will be reviewed on Wargaming Recon, you know that you have to, you gotta, you need to keep on gaming.